My name is Alex. I never imagined that the life I had built with someone I loved could unravel so completely, so quietly, and yet so definitively. Sarah and I met in college, two young dreamers who believed that love alone was enough to overcome any challenge. We married after graduation, moved into a small, modest apartment, and began constructing a life together, one that, at the time, felt secure, full of possibility, and built on mutual trust. In those early years, everything felt effortless. We laughed often, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing, and supported each other through the small challenges that life threw our way. Our routines became rituals: morning coffees, long walks on Sundays, shared responsibilities, and the comfort of knowing someone would always be there. I thought that this daily rhythm, the quiet familiarity, was proof that our bond was unbreakable. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first signs of trouble were subtle, almost imperceptible. Sarah, who once greeted me every morning with warmth and attention, began to withdraw emotionally. Conversations that had been effortless became rushed or superficial. She seemed distracted, preoccupied with things she never used to care about. The intimacy and spontaneity that had characterized our relationship slowly faded. Touches, smiles, and lingering glances grew rare. The distance was quiet at first, barely noticeable, but gradually it became impossible to ignore. I rationalized the changes for a long time. Perhaps she was tired from work. Perhaps I was missing subtle signs of stress or exhaustion. I told myself that this was normal, that long-term relationships have quiet periods, that patience was a virtue, and that understanding meant accepting her distance without question. I chose to ignore the creeping unease, hoping it would pass. But in reality, my avoidance allowed the silence and emotional detachment to grow unchecked. Weeks turned into months. The house, once filled with laughter and conversation, became a place of quiet tension. I tried to talk to her, but the conversations never went deep. She would nod politely, offer brief replies, and return to her phone. I felt invisible in my own home. Some nights, I would lie awake listening to the faint glow of her screen, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. Something was wrong, but I didn't want to confront it. I told myself it was nothing, that my imagination was overreacting. The truth revealed itself one ordinary evening, in a moment that felt both inevitable and surreal. I came home earlier than usual from work, expecting the normal quiet, perhaps a cup of tea, and some time together. Sarah was in the kitchen, but she seemed tense, overly cautious. Her eyes flicked repeatedly to her phone, her posture stiff, her hands fidgeting. There was a sense of secrecy, of something unspoken, that immediately put me on edge. Later, while pouring coffee, I noticed her laptop open on the counter. A notification appeared on the screen. My curiosity, though not malicious, led me to glance at it. And there it was, a single line of text that froze my blood. Words of intimacy, affection, and secrecy directed at someone else. I stood motionless, heart racing, unable to process what I was seeing. My mind tried to deny it, but each subsequent message confirmed what I had feared. This wasn't a single moment of weakness. This was an ongoing affair. I read through weeks of conversations. Messages filled with private jokes, compliments, emotional confessions, all intended for someone who wasn't me. Late-night texts, shared laughter, moments of vulnerability, all occurring while I was sitting beside her, unaware. I realized that for months, perhaps years, she had been emotionally absent from our marriage, and her absence had been replaced by someone else. The emotional impact was instantaneous and overwhelming. I felt anger, betrayal, grief, confusion, and shame all at once. Every memory of our time together became suspect. Every shared laugh, every tender moment, every intimate gesture suddenly seemed like part of a carefully constructed illusion. I questioned myself endlessly. Had I failed as a husband? Had I missed the early signs? Was I not enough? The confrontation came quietly. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I simply asked for honesty. Sarah's response was tentative, almost weary. She admitted to the affair, explaining that it started emotionally, that she had felt unseen, neglected, and lonely. She spoke of months of emotional isolation, of seeking intimacy and validation elsewhere. I listened, trying to process her words, but they did little to soothe the storm raging within me. I was heartbroken, humiliated, and profoundly sad. And yet, part of me recognized the truth in what she said. Our marriage had allowed distance and silence to grow. And we had both ignored the cracks. The days that followed were unbearable. Life became a blur. I moved through routines on autopilot: work, errands, meals. But every action, every moment was colored by the knowledge of betrayal. Anger surged in waves, only to dissolve into emptiness and despair. Sleep was impossible. My mind replayed memories endlessly, each one now tinged with doubt. Even mundane moments, walking past her in the kitchen, seeing her glance at her phone, hearing her laugh, became reminders of the life I had lost. I spent hours reflecting, replaying the past, searching for mistakes I had made. I analyzed conversations, gestures, and moments, trying to identify where I had failed or where the warning signs had appeared. I realized that the betrayal was not only about the affair itself, but about trust, intimacy, and the collapse of a shared world. I felt erased, replaced emotionally, and profoundly alone. Weeks turned into months. Sarah wanted to repair the marriage. She offered promises, therapy, transparency, and renewed commitment. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to salvage the life we had built. But trust, once broken so fundamentally, cannot be restored by words alone. Even if I stayed, doubt would linger. Fear of being replaced emotionally again would shadow every interaction. Love without trust is fragile, unstable, and hollow. I realized that staying would mean living in perpetual uncertainty, questioning every interaction, and sacrificing my own emotional safety. So I chose to leave. The separation was quiet. There was no drama, no public confrontation, just a recognition that some fractures cannot be repaired without losing oneself in the process. Letting go was excruciating. It wasn't just the loss of Sarah or our marriage. It was the loss of a life I had imagined, the future we had planned, the shared dreams that now existed only in memory. Grief engulfed me. Grief for what was, what could have been, and what I had believed in. Over time, I began to learn from the experience. Silence is often the first sign of emotional distance. Comfort is not a substitute for connection. Love alone cannot sustain a relationship without honesty, presence, and trust. Betrayal often reflects the choices, failures, and needs of the one who commits it, rather than the shortcomings of the one who suffers it. Choosing oneself is not selfish, it is essential. Healing has been slow but steady. I have learned that moving forward does not mean forgetting. It means integrating the experience, acknowledging the pain, and allowing it to shape a stronger, more self-aware, and emotionally resilient version of myself. Trust must first be rebuilt within oneself before it can ever exist with another. In time, the quiet moments of life, once fraught with unease, regain meaning, not as they were before, but as something new, forged from understanding, self-respect, and emotional integrity. Sometimes, the hardest loss is not just a person, but the life you believed in and the version of yourself that existed within that life. And sometimes, the courage to walk away is the only way to reclaim yourself, your dignity, and your emotional safety. I have learned that the past cannot be changed, but the future can still be claimed. Love, when combined with honesty and respect, can thrive. But love without those foundations is fragile and fleeting. And self-respect, once violated, must be honored. no matter how painful the choice to do so may be. I have also learned to embrace solitude, to sit with my thoughts, and to reflect on the value of connection built on trust and transparency. I have learned that some wounds leave permanent marks, but those marks serve as reminders, warnings, guides, and sources of strength. And I have learned that it is possible to love, again, but only after learning to love and respect oneself first.